I would say, first of all, we had about 100 play scrimmage today. That was live tackling, blocking, the whole thing. And which I thought was good. It was for our first real practice where it was all live tackling, getting people on the ground. The only people that were not live were the quarterbacks. I thought it was a physical day. I thought there were moments when pretty much all position groups had moments where they kind of shined. And then there was areas when each position group took their opportunities to make some mistakes that hurt. And I think that's the part really for us. The key component is coming out of this scrimmage and really teaching really well, and the players be willing to be coached so that they can improve their game individually, so that we can improve collectively. But I thought all in all, for the amount of work that we got in, I thought the guys responded well. We came out of it injury free, which is a positive anytime that you have a scrimmage. And now we got to clean it up. And we got to get to each position group and clean up those guys, and then have a really good week next week into our second scrimmage next Saturday.
Hey guys, go ahead and put up your raised hand function. We'll go through some questions. Start with Sam.
Hey, Steve, when it comes to Casey Thompson, I know he's been in this program a while, obviously, learning your offense, but can you, the fact that he's played some games and has been, a college football quarterback with a lot of practice reps, does that manifest itself? Do you see that on the practice field? Does it show itself?
Well, I think experience is always helpful, especially when situations come up, right? Whether it's a third down, a red area, things of that nature. So I do think experience helps. There's, obviously game day experience even more so helps. But also on the flip side of that is we're a new system, right? We've got a new scheme. And so, he's learning and thinking too. And that's the part we've got to do a really good job with as coaches, is trying to minimize some of the thinking that's taking place, not only with the quarterbacks, but at every position.
Is it my turn?
Go ahead, John. Hi.
Oh, I'm sorry, Coach. With the quarterbacks, you said some group shines, and then they did some things that kind of hurt them at times. What did the quarterbacks do where they shined, and what were some of the things that they did that hurt the group?
Well, I thought for the most part we threw the ball pretty accurately today. We missed a couple throws here and there, but I thought both of them moved the ball pretty well, especially when they were operating with the first offense. That both of the guys stepped in, had good command, moved the ball, created some explosive plays. I think that the biggest thing that we've got to improve on offensively, which falls on the quarterback, is just too many sacks right now. Our pocket presence and awareness needs to improve, which is pretty natural in your first scrimmage. The defensive line is rushing the passer. We've got a little bit of a quick whistle, but the guys were getting home, and I think the quarterbacks can help that from a decision-making standpoint, and also stepping up in the pocket. So that's definitely an area where we need to improve.
Jeff Howe, you're up.
Hey, sorry, Tyler Owens kind of teased the other day on Twitter, maybe moving to linebacker. Is that a move that you guys have looked at or are making? And whether you have or not, do you look at some of your bigger DBs, Tyler, BJ Foster, Chris Adamore, those type guys, and you view those as the defensive staff kind of view those guys through this prism of where the game is shifting towards almost like positionless football? You just want to get your best 11 out there, regardless of whether he's a safety or a will linebacker or whatever.
I think that's safe to say. You're always trying to find, at whatever position you're in, you're trying to find big, athletic, fast people, right? And as many of those as you can get on the field that play sound football and good football, that give you an opportunity to do that, you try to do it. Tyler, obviously is a big, good, long physical athlete. And so to give him some opportunity, a little closer to the ball, a little closer to the box, was something, we looked at and we'll continue to look at. He made a couple nice plays today when he was down around the ball. So we got to look at the rest of the tape to see what it looked like. And then clearly, we've got some decent depth at that safety nickel position. And we're a little bit thin here at linebacker. So if you can, get a guy like T.O. close to the ball and see how far he can take it, that's you're exactly right. That's something for us to look at.
All right, Davis, go ahead.
Hey, Steve, when you're talking about the guys talking about the defensive lineman getting home, that's actually, to me, that lights me up because that's sort of been an uneven area over the last few years. What have been your impressions about Coburn, Sweat, Collins, all those guys so far?
Well, I think Coburn, he provides a great deal of leadership and energy. I love that guy. You know, he brings it every day. He's obviously, you know, what he does really well is defend the run. But he does have some quickness and does do a nice job in the pass rush. But you know, he clearly he's built to stop the run and does a really good job of it. I think Alford has come on. You know, he had the wrist injury coming off of last season. He's really come on here, kind of even the second half of this past week. I mean, he's very long. He's quick for a big man, which can cause some issues for us. Sweat, obviously, he's been rehabbing from his shoulder injury, so we haven't had him really in practice. You know, he's been doing the walkthroughs and things. Haven't had him in practice. But Vernon Broughton's been another bright spot. Another big, long guy who has some quickness, who's been encouraging. And then the two guys coming off the edge right now clearly are Jacoby and Ray. Those two guys that were a problem today and have been a problem so far throughout the first week of spring ball, with Jacoby on one side and Jones and Ray Thornton on the other. They're a handful. So that combination of the big guys inside with those guys coming off the edge has been good for us.
Nick Moyle, you're up.
Yeah, Sark, you know, Jordan Whittington's a guy that's, you know, really had his injury problems here, but every time he's on the field, it seems like he's doing something dynamic. I'm just curious, you know, what have you seen from him and what have you learned about him, you know, both sort of as a player and just as a guy?
I really like Jordan. From the day I've got here, he's done everything I've asked. You know, he's part of our leadership committee. I think he's a guy who's really learned our system well. He's probably the furthest along of understanding, can play multiple positions at the wide receiver position right now. He's been a playmaker so far throughout the beginning of spring ball. And he's also been a real asset on special teams. So again, you know, we're aware of some of the injuries he's had in the past. But again, like I said, when I first got here, it was a clean slate, and what you are now is who you are in our eyes. And Jordan has been off to a great start for us.
Chris Tavares, you're up.
Steve, obviously this is the first scrimmage and things are still new with you and your staff and this team and this roster. And you talked about some of the things that you'll see with quarterbacks having some sack issues, but what are you looking for in a first scrimmage? What do you want to achieve from this first full contact go?
Well, I think the one key is how are we tackling, right? I mean, that's, you know, we do periods where we might tackle throughout the week, but how do we tackle defensively? Are we able to get people on the ground? That's the first part. The second part is, you know, how clean can we be early on? How many penalties are we having? Do we have any exchange issues with the quarterbacks? Are we blowing coverages in the back end? And we didn't have a lot of that today. So that part was encouraging. And then, you know, you're trying to figure out who has got the mental toughness to persevere. You know, generally throughout practice, you have periods when you do team periods and different things. Well, you come out today and you have a 100 play scrimmage, you know, who can kind of mentally overcome as things get hard, because the game of football is hard. It's physically tough and it's mentally tough. And you need to be those two things to be successful. And those are some of the things I was looking for on field. Now, clearly I'll go back and look at the tape and look at, you know, whether it's schemes or different things that we need to adjust. But for the most part, trying to just get a feel for the mentality that we have when things get hard, make sure we're not a sloppy team or a disciplined team. And then ultimately our ability to tackle early on.
Anwar, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, a philosophy question. You know, throughout your career, whether it's been Najee, Javoris, Allen, Sankey, you've always kind of seemed to have a bell cow kind of running back. I'm kind of curious as to what do you feel like that's the advantage for a running back to have those kind of, you know, carries as opposed to, you know, kind of and maybe a really even split?
Well, I think some of those years it was out of necessity. You know, if you only have one back, that's the guy you got to hand the ball to. You try to, you know, give the ball to your best players when you can. We're in a unique situation. You know, clearly I think Bijan, coming off of the year he had last year, is a very good football player. But you know, we talked about Jordan Whittington, but another guy who's kind of fallen into that same category as Jay Witt has been Roshan. Roshan has done everything we've asked from the day we've got here. He's worked really hard in the weight room. He's practicing really well, and he went out and played really well today. So we might be in a little different, space as it pertains to one back versus two backs, sharing carries, one lead dog, whatever that is. I do believe whoever it is back there, I think the running back, kind of frames the identity of your football team. And we pride ourselves on being a physical football team and being a mentally tough football team. And I think that a lot of that kind of the running back embodies that with our ability to run it and get the tough yards and score in the low red and convert on third downs and things of that nature. So, but both those guys are off to a good start.
Senator Golden, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Steve, this is another philosophy question. I know this is a heavy teaching period for you, but in your past history, how much do you go ones versus ones in football practice, and that fine line between teaching, evaluating, and seeing who's best?
I would say for the most part, that is what we do, is go ones versus ones. We had a couple periods today where we went ones versus twos, but I would say for the most part, almost 90% of our practices are ones versus ones. I think that that's, you got to go against the best to try to improve. And, that's just kind of the mindset and the philosophy. Like I said, today we did some ones versus twos. We had a couple periods of that. But, again, we're trying to push people to new heights. We make each other better by performing across from one another and pushing each other to go to another height and another level. And that doesn't mean the twos versus twos isn't very competitive. It is, or even the threes versus threes. But the reality of it is we're trying to push one another to excel our game and take it to a new level. And to do that, sometimes you have to go against the best to get there.
Joe Cook, you're up.
Steve, over the last couple of years, quarterback run has basically been this program's short yardage play. And I know that's not something that either of these quarterbacks that you have right now really have as strengths or something you've done a ton in the past. So are those running backs, Bijan and Roshan, really starting to pick up a little bit more in that short yardage game and be a bigger part of that process for this program?
I believe so. I thought they both ran well today. They're both, big physical guys. They got good pad level, good lean. Obviously, Stan Drayton's a tremendous running back coach, and he instills that in them. And they need to be. I don't think overnight I'm going to go to a quarterback run system. So our runners got to find a way to get the tough yards when it's needed.
Time for a few last ones. Carter, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Cade Brewer talked to us the other day and mentioned that the tight ends have a lot on their plate in this offense. I wanted to ask you how the freshman guys, Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis, have been adjusting to that and how they've been doing on the field and in the classroom and in spring practice.
Well, I think both Gunnar and Juan have both done a nice job. This transition for these young men when they come mid-year and they go to school, they're in workouts, and then here comes spring ball when they should still be in high school. That's not an easy transition. And at that position, at the tight end position, especially in our offense, is not an easy position because we rely on them a lot in the run game, and we also rely on them quite a bit in the passing game. So there's a lot on their plate, but those guys have responded. They've had some good moments. They've had some tough moments, but that's all part of the progression that they're under. And they keep coming back and working hard. And I think they'll both end up being really nice players for us.
Danny, go ahead.
Steve, in the time you've been here so far, kind of going back to what you said about Keandre and Jordan, have you been able to get a good gauge on who the leaders on this team are, and what do you want to see from a leader? What is a captain/leader under your system?
Well, I think a leader embodies the core principles and values of the football program. That they're disciplined on and off the field, that they are accountable to the team and they hold their teammates accountable. That they're committed to the team, that they exude the mental and physical toughness needed to play a very hard game, and then ultimately that they kind of be that conduit between myself and the coaches and that locker room, and vice versa from the locker room to the coaches. I do think there's a conduit piece there to convey messages and different things. And I, like I said, I think we've got quite a few guys in this team that are buying in and that are falling under that role in that category. And I'm thankful for that. Now, I've been at places where it hasn't been that way, but like I said early on, we've had quite a bit of buy-in, and we've got some leaders on this team that are, I think, directly responsible for that.
Two last ones, Jeff and Anwar.
Hey, so 2 quick ones. How much cross training would you say goes on between the safeties and the nickels, just throughout a given practice or a couple of practices? And then offensively, whether you want to be a 12 personnel offense, an 11 personnel offense, 20, whatever it is that something you want to have pinned down by the time you get done with spring ball, or is that just kind of like an ongoing kind of evolutionary type deal?
Our safeties and nickels / stars, they meet together, they do individual together. So they cross train quite a bit. They're together all the time. And as far as personnels on offense, I want them all. Like, I don't try to pin us down and say we are this or just that. I mean, I have a firm belief the more things we do really well, the harder we are to stop. And so if we've got 10, 11, 12, 21 personnel, 13 personnel, shoot, I want defenses to try to have to prepare for all that. But the key to that is making sure that we can operate in all those different things. And so that's what all this is for. But I do believe in the more things we do well, the harder we are to defend. And so we try to put a lot on the guys and see how much they can swallow and digest. And like I said, they've done a really nice job up into this point.
Last one, Anwar, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, just the last 2 for me, real quick ones. Have you guys made up those 3 practices that you missed, because of the COVID stuff? And then the last thing is, how successful do you think this transition has been for you and your guys as, taking over the program?
Making up of the practices, I guess, that's a kind of a weird, because we're kind of maneuvering through. We didn't say we're going to make up practice 2 and practice 3 on these days. We kind of just paused and then picked back up. So we just are kind of going through spring ball. I don't feel like we're trying to have to make up for it. We're just back into our normal routine of it all. So by the time the spring game comes, we'll have 15 practices in. So our transition has been good. I mean, it's, I think, like I said, we've got a good staff. We've got a lot of buy-in from the players. Got a hardworking group that we got a good culture so far. We've got a long way to go. We got a lot of work to do, but that's understandable. But we've got a willing group of coaches and players that are putting in the work and the time to be great, and we'll see how far we can take it.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you.